Ready.
Welcome to episode 57 of the Go Get 'em Agility podcast. My name is Margaret Hughes and I'm your host. And it's been a minute. We are continuing on my beginning foundation workbook and what I go through on each section. So we are on section E about equipment. All right, when I'm doing equipment, I am definitely looking for a couple of things. One, clarity that the dog understands what I expect of them for the equipment. So clarity on understanding, and then confidence of execution. So those are two of my main goals for equipment. Are they clear on what I want them to do? And will they do it with confidence, and do they have drive to do it and look for the equipment on their own? And that drive and looking for equipment on their own can take some time for some dogs. One thing that I definitely do not want from any of my dogs is for them just to do it for the sake of doing it. I can easily get most dogs to do almost any piece of equipment. But what I want focus on from my dogs is clarity of what I want, and then for them to be driven to want to do it as well. For them to love the equipment, for them to love to go around a jump stanchion, for them to love to go through a tunnel, for them to love to get on a teeter and feel the motion. So I'm not looking for them to just do it for the sake of doing it. All right, and some dogs require a little bit more training than others. Right? So some dogs, you really need to make it worth their while to find equipment enjoyable. And so when I'm looking at building in equipment, I'm looking at building in understanding of what I want. So that's job number one. So some things are not inherently fun for dogs. They don't enjoy jumping. They'll do it, but they don't enjoy it. Some dogs do enjoy it, but most dogs, if you're doing repetitive jumping, they could take it or leave it. The tunnels, they have a little bit more fun going through the tunnels, but again, some dogs need a little bit more building up of the value of the equipment and making it a little bit more of an agency, that they have more agency over doing it or not doing it. And so when I'm looking at building in drive, sometimes dogs need to go back and build value for the obstacle or multiple of obstacles over time than other dogs. And understanding that it's not just one piece of equipment, but that it's multiple. So there's a program out there called Movement Puzzles, which works on the premise of the two target training or Vito's game. What it does is it builds in the value of multiple items for one reward, but over and over and over again. So it creates this pattern, and dogs are very pattern and routine driven. And so if you build a pattern on what you expect of your dog, then they build in more drive and value for the obstacles as well. And so I utilize the two target training a lot to help build in stamina, duration, distance, and an understanding of what I want, as opposed to just showing them the obstacle and having them execute it. So for jumps, for surface training, paddle boards, balance pods, pivot pods, the movement puzzles is a fun way to help build that in for some dogs. As far as equipment goes, and on the physical difficulties for your dog, one thing that's really important, we have a tendency to blame the equipment and the dog not either understanding the equipment or not liking the equipment. One thing that I have seen time and time again, which can hinder agility training, is the husbandry of the dog. So making sure that toenails are clipped appropriately, making sure that there are no mats that are grabbing at the dog's groin and belly when they are executing and stretching out for equipment. If the dog has mats underneath their body, or anywhere within their body, that can and will cause pain or just at least discomfort for any equipment that I may be asking them to perform. And when we're looking at how a dog feels about equipment, they are going to blame the equipment every single time over blaming the handler. So, or their own body, right? And so they don't understand that mats can cause pain to themselves. But what they do understand is that I just went on, by, through, over this piece of equipment and it hurt me. So make sure that your dog is groomed well. Make sure that your dog's toenails are trimmed. Here's a little example. My daughter's dog, Millie, was 8 years old, was on Team USA, was a brilliant agility dog, and one day she stopped dead in the weave pulls. Now, this dog loved her weave pulls. She would do them anytime. She absolutely loved them. But one day she stopped dead in her tracks and said, I'm not doing them. And she had an abscess in her mouth that as she was bouncing side to side on the weave pulls, something obviously caused some pain, and she stopped dead in the tracks. Now, this is a dog with a ton of history on weave pulls, so getting her back onto the weave pulls was not a problem once we fixed the abscess. But for a young dog that has very little history on equipment, they are going to blame the equipment, and then it is going to become much harder to convince them that the equipment is safe and fun and predictable. Because if it's not predictable and it's not feeling fun and it's not rewardable to them, then they are going to shy away from it. So anytime that, two things. One, as you are building your agility equipment up, we want positive history. If they're getting frustrated, if they're getting scared, if they're worried and they're forced to do the equipment or heavily encouraged to do the equipment when they don't want to, then eventually that is going to break down and cause issues. So we want confidence out of the gate, followed by clarity, and then them understanding their job of it, what it is towards the end of completion, like what it really means to do it independent. So confidence, clarity, and then independence. Once a dog has history of equipment and he's pretty reliable, right? You can say, yeah, I would bet my house payment that my dog can do that. And then it breaks down. Then you may have some sort of physical problem going on with your dog that we need to make sure is taken care of and ruled out. So on all of my equipment, I want clarity of what I want. I want accuracy. So I go for teaching them first what it is. Then I teach them how to accurately navigate what I want, or how to accurately perform the obstacle. Then I want independence within that, so building some drive, building some independence. I want value for the obstacle, want to build up the value of every single obstacle so that the dog wants to do it and I'm not forcing them to do it. And then once I have all of that, then I go for speed. And before I even get to speed, sometimes you can get speed in certain circumstances and the dogs are driving really nicely, but then you change the angle of the approach and all of a sudden the clarity and the understanding fall away. So if you have clarity on one angle, you need to make sure that you get clarity on other angles, knowing and learning what angles are more difficult and what angles are easier, understanding how your handling can affect drive forward, how it affects turning, and knowing that the path in between the obstacles comes down to handling. right? So we have equipment, learning how to navigate the equipment, but then learning handling in between the obstacles is a whole nother ball game. So that is talking about handling between the obstacles and of course on the obstacles, but learning how to just do the obstacles is not all of what agility is. Agility is also between the obstacles and how we handle that. All right, so build up clarity, build up confidence, build up independence, which is also building up value for the obstacle. Oh, and then commitment. I failed to talk about commitment. So staying committed to an obstacle once you've cued it, which also involves opposing motion training. That is a ton of building value for going and getting something at a distance from you. And knowing that sometimes opposing motion can be difficult for some dogs, especially if they've been told to not do something over and over and over again. So dogs learning how to handle incorrect answers is a trained behavior. If you tell your dog no, 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 they will stop trying. They will go into waiting for you to show them the answer so that they don't get in trouble. So do be aware of that if you're constantly telling your dog what they cannot do, eventually they will stop doing everything and you're going to have to show them what to do. So that will drastically work against you when it comes to distance and independence training, because they will literally wait for you to tell them what to do. Learning how to have no be an answer and bounce back, be resilient to trying again, is a very, very valuable skill for a dog. And when I'm giving my dog yes, no answers, if I'm giving too many no answers, I work really, really hard to make the next answer correct. We call it rewarding the best of the junk, because there are some dogs out there that will give up. And I never want my dog to give up in a game, give up on an obstacle, give up on a pattern. I want them to keep trying and understand that getting it wrong is not the end of the world. You don't need to quit. You can try something else. Give me a different answer instead of the one you just gave me. And in that vein, sometimes what I find is if you ask for, let's talk about jumping. So with jumping, there's lots of ways that dogs can jump, from taking a regular jump to a rear cross to a backside. And so sometimes when dogs take a jump and they guess one direction that you didn't want, so let's say we're doing a rear cross and they guess incorrectly and they go the wrong direction, when they approach that jump again, sometimes they'll go to the backside and say, is this the answer that you want? And so when they're getting the answers wrong multiple times, but they are trying different approaches, then it is important that the handlers step in and help show them, especially for a sensitive dog. If they're not a sensitive dog, then you can get away with it a little bit more, but go back, make sure that you're going back in and working specific verbals against each other, right? So that if you've got a verbal backside and a verbal jump and a verbal rear cross cue, that you're actually working them side by side so that the dog can learn to understand the difference. What is the difference that was given? Was it just a verbal, or was it a verbal and body motion? Was it verbal and location? So what is the difference between those two signals when it comes to jump training? And same thing goes with tunnels. The difference between going into a tunnel on a regular turn, so no side change, versus going into a tunnel with a side change. So a rear cross, dogs need to understand you're going in on this rear cross signal versus a traditional tunnel send. And again, that's building equipment, but then we're also getting into handling. But can the dog understand that they can do these obstacles from all different sides of you, from all different angles, from all different speeds of you, speeds of the dog, and coming off of other obstacles. So it's starting to include in just a little bit of sequence work. All right, that's my equipment spiel. Confidence, clarity, independence, speed.